Palworld. If you remotely frequent the internet or check in on the latest surrounding the world of video games, you've probably heard about Palworld. So, for those not in the know, what is Palworld and why is that Pokemon holding an AK-47? Well, Palworld is the latest from Pocketpair, the team behind Craftopia, and it combines the monster tamer aspects of Pokemon with a survival game, and it does it so effortlessly. It creates a gameplay loop that becomes rewarding to players no matter what aspect of the game they engage with, and couples two major loops of gameplay which blend so well together. There is many different things here and many different angles you can look at this game, and it has had so much surrounding it, whether or not it's a copy, a clone, or it's just Pokemon with guns, and that's what I'm here to talk about today, because I know that many have already covered this topic by now and sung the praises. 19 million players alone says enough about how much of a success Palworld is, but I would just like to cover in this video today my experiences with the game and things that I really liked about it. It's important to note that this game is also an early access game, so whilst I will note some things that could be improved upon with this game, and there is things and areas here where this game can be improved, I will be a bit more lenient and understanding of the game's polish and a few little minor things that could come up along the way. Lastly, as the thumbnail suggests, I want to tackle the big questions surrounding this game and the long-standing question that I have for this game's future, and that is, can this game really go the distance? As a game like this can expand and add new features, pals, and truly become a competitor to those bigger titles that people think it's blatantly ripping off, like Pokemon. I hope I can see this game thrive and take the immediate success that its early access release has garnered and run with it and become a real competitor and a real game that we always come back to. And I'm hoping that with this video that I can answer that question of, is Palworld just a trend for 2024, or will it be a game that we'll be talking about for years to come? So without further ado, let's get into my early access review for Palworld. The gameplay for Palworld is divided into two separate gameplay loops that run in tandem with one another. It sees the core loop of base building and resource gathering melded together into this creature capture gameplay loop of a Pokemon game. However, where Palworld's loop comes into its own is how you utilize the pals that you catch for working at your base or using in battle. The formula for Palworld takes the monster capture aspects that you're used to, but fleshes them out to provide more reasons than just battling and beating different gym leaders. Different pals have different strengths. I feel like what makes Palworld such a hit of a game is how it marries the gameplay systems of two already well-established genres and melds them into one game that ends up feeling unique. Yes, Palworld does borrow a lot of influences from so many games that you can just identify immediately that it does feel like it is an amalgamation of so many other existing games that you might say it doesn't have its own identity, but weirdly it works in the inverse way, where I feel like there's just so much that you can see from a bunch of different other little things that they've pulled and put together here, crafted in their own way, that does provide its own sense of individuality. It's clear from playing Palworld that you can see these influences from many other games, and how it has influenced the development of Palworld, but with so many different influences, Palworld does still manage to feel distinct and unique. The biggest draw in the first glance of the monster capture elements is how it resembles that striking comparison to Game Freak's Pokemon. However, the difference is in the functionality of these pals once you catch them. You see, here in Palworld, the different pals have a function where it is the traditional sense of battling, but also capturing these pals to be allocated at work for your bases. And it serves as a utility and different functions, like a samurai pal that is good at chopping down trees, or a duck or sea serpent that is good at watering plants, or using a flame fox like Fox Sparks to light a furnace. There are tons of different use cases and functions that can improve the efficiency of the production of your base. And as you explore more, you'll acquire better pals that can better be resourced at your base to complete different tasks. And this is just one side of that Palworld experience, the monster capture side, that cleverly connects into the other side of Palworld's loop, and that is the survival elements of Palworld. Much like with any survival game, the game starts off with the player having to collect resources to build a base. However, thankfully, this is one aspect that I think Palworld absolutely nails. all those minutiae of gathering wood and stone and all these different objects and items to craft a base only really plagued the game within its first few hours, and then it trims a lot of the busy work and fat that plagues many other survival games where you're mindlessly having to grind for resources into what becomes a more resource management driven game where you are assigning pals to do all the more boring tasks that would occupy a survival game, whilst you go out and collect better pals to improve your base and your battling party. It really does make the interlocking loops of all different aspects of Palworld so engaging. You can come back to your base and you can have like wood, ore, and stone ready to just craft and build your base, and you can focus on the more funner aspects of a survival game, which is building bases, unlocking new items, and further extending and crafting your base, as well as resources and gear to go out and explore more of that survival world, the open world there. So I think that this is one aspect that Palworld absolutely nails, because it trims a lot of the minutiae and feeds into what makes collecting these pals so great, because they all have unique passive skills as well as different types of jobs that they work really well at. So the survival elements of Palworld shift more into this resource management feeling, where you're running a base of operations, where your pals do all the mindless work whilst you can focus on building the base and doing all the fun stuff. And one thing that I really want to get into is just how expansive the game becomes in how you can allocate your pals. You can have them crafting all types of things, not just gathering resources, but also making items for you, like crafting guns, ammunition, and all the good stuff that you need to go out on your adventures. It really does, if you can efficiently plan your base, trim out a lot of the busy work that would plague a survival game, but also makes you think and try to be as efficient as possible to make the best base to get to that point. So it's not like it's just handed to you. There really is a great balance here, and that's something I really want to get into now, which is the exploration and technology tree in Palworld. Whilst on the topic of the open world here in Palworld, this is one aspect of the game that I do feel can be heavily expanded upon, and is one area that I do feel can see a lot of life with subsequent patches. I'm a bit more forgiving on this game given the fact that it is in early access, and to be honest, for an early access game there is still a good amount of content here to sink your teeth into, which is more than I can say for many other survival games that release in early access. However, I still do believe that there is a long ways to go in the exploration department for what Palworld's vision is to be fully realized. With that being said, I think all the basic foundations and building blocks of this experience are here and looking in good shape. And that leads to the next question. So what is there in Palworld's exploration? Well, there is of course capturing different pals that are scattered across multiple different biomes, and these pals of different types belong to those particular biomes. Your ice types belong in the snowy mountains, and your more fire and lava type of pals belong in the lava biomes. These pals can spawn at different times of day and all that stuff that you've become accustomed to. There is also shiny equivalents of these pals too, which take the form of a larger version of that pal, have a twinkle sound around them, and have stars glowing around them too. They've been a somewhat rare occurrence, and they're always fun when I do encounter them, bar the one or two times where they've despawned or clipped under the map or something random has happened there. There are different factions of enemies that'll attack you and even pals around you, and these respective factions have different camps where they will hold pals hostage in a cage, and you can infiltrate those bases and you can free the pal. These camps aren't too complex, and the enemy AI is not overly complex either. The most damage they can probably do is throw a grenade at you or gang up on you, but if you summon one of your pals and throw them out to help you out, you won't really ever have that much trouble. There are also world bosses, which respawn every hour or so after you've completed them, and these are like bigger, harder versions of the normal pal variant that you'll find in the open world. They usually come with some better stats and passives, which make them more useful for battling or working. There are also cave-like dungeons, which have pal bosses at the end of them, and also have a bunch of resources along the way, and even some unique pals inside. Whilst I do find these caves to be a little repetitive after you do them a few times, I do think it's a nice detour here and there. But spicing up and changing what they do and how these caves interlock would provide a much more refreshing take on that aspect of the game. There is also different towns that you can step into as well, which I'll be honest, feel very bare bones right now, but is one area that I'm hoping with subsequent updates really does flesh out with functionality, vendors and activities and tons of different things. They could make these cities feel like big hubs, then it would really flesh out the world. Not to mention that there is already a plethora of different gym leader-esque type of battles that you can find in these big towers across the map and battle. Although, here's another thing, with defeating them, it doesn't really seem to feel that rewarding or like it contributes to anything. When you fight these gym leader equivalents in Pokemon, you get the badge that leads you to the next gym leader and eventually the Elite Four, which culminates in you becoming the champion. Here in Palworld, you can take on these different leaders of that world, but beating them, going in any which path, it doesn't really provide any meaning and it feels very skeletal right now. I think that the functionality of how they operate is decent in concept, but I'd like to see a lot more fleshed out there because it doesn't really provide much of a reward outside of the glitch that we've discovered where you can catch the PAL inside that boss fight. But overall, I do think that with all these things I've listed, they are, in concept, fun activities. If the team at Pocketpair continue to iterate on this, I can see this evolution of many of these activities being so engaging and fun, and I can see Palworld really just being a game that is enticing to come back to every time they release a set of new pals and new activities to go with it. And at this point in time, they're continuing to work on adding a bunch of new functionality and features, such as PvP, raids, and things of that nature, so I'm thinking that the future is only looking bright in this regard, but I guess only time will tell. As it stands, I think that the gameplay loop for Palworld is pretty fun, but I think given the bare bones nature of its exploration, it will start to wear on you over time. But overall, it is a fun and engaging experience, and capturing all the pals is a blast in of itself. The map itself is huge, with tons of pals to capture and that occupy many of these different spaces. And each pal is unique and interesting to collect, making this overall experience a blast to play, especially if you're playing it with some friends. The leveling system for Palworld is quite an interesting model. The unlock tree follows a battle pass style structure where you level up and unlock new items that you can craft and upgrade. There are also stats that you can upgrade with each level that improve things such as your carry weight, stamina, and work speed. These feel like minor boosts, and the number goes up kind of progression, with only a few that feel significant being carry speed, because encumbrance in of itself is a hassle. The technology tree will be the main area where you'll see yourself spending time upgrading and unlocking many of the resources that'll progress your base and the weapons that you use and pal spheres for your adventures. Overall, I do feel like the progression in Palworld is one of the game's biggest major hooks, alongside the efficiency of leveling up your base and exploring the different biomes of the open world. It does feel like the items that you unlock do feel meaningful, and each upgrade serves as something that you can use as a feature or function, either for your arsenal of exploration or the efficiency of your base. I'm keen to see how they iterate and build on this, especially with the new features that they'll be adding in the future, such as PvP and raids. I hope that as this game evolves, they continue to add in some crazy ideas that can further build on many of the solid bones and foundations of this formula that they have crafted here. Because I think that the basic loop of building a base and exploring, these two things and this upgrade system all kind of work really well together. Each aspect of it feels familiar, but distinct in this unique way of how it all glues itself together and works. So the other major hook that I mentioned in Palworld is the experience of kidnapping pals and then assigning them to work at your base, or alternatively shoving them in a box to look at. But as I mentioned earlier, one of the things that I feel Palworld brilliantly handles is how it utilizes pals. Whilst some may be better equipped to wander the open world with you, others feel like a great fit at the base for being assigned to different tasks. There are also different versions of the same pal that you can collect with some different passive skills, which can improve how effective they are at working on a given task or how quick they are at completing tasks, which opens up a whole other realm of min-maxing your base if you really did want to go down that route. There are different consumables that you can find in the world too that you can use to level up your pals and the facilities at your base as well, and unlock different skills for your pal as well. There's these things that look like devil fruits from One Piece that you can assign different skills to, sort of like TMs from Pokemon. Your pals here also have a sanity meter as well. Yes, if the work conditions are bad enough, your pals will become hungry, among many other ailments like fractures, ulcers, and depression. Yes, your pals can become depressed from neglect. Isn't that awesome? So to me, here in Palworld, it feels like you're more micromanaging your pals than you are managing the work that they are actually doing. Where they take out all the menial tasks like chopping down trees, you're more managing how sane they are and maintaining a good workplace environment for these pals. Or not, if you choose not to, but you want to keep them in good health and keep them sane so you can get the most efficient work. It's great having a lot of the busy work abstracted from you in this game. That is one thing that I think I really do like about this game. It's like you can now focus on the real issues, like building a new spa, so Tombat can sit in it automatically for like the 10th time in one day. Honestly, I do really like this system. I think like the resource management and assigning different powers that you find out in the open world to these bases, having them working and doing all the menial tasks while you can put down different items at the base that help improve morale and managing their morale, it meshes all these different genres together so well and it makes the game so oddly addictive. The biggest question that I have surrounding the recent Palworld phenomenon that kicked off earlier this year is if the game is able to go the distance in terms of establishing itself as a series that can rival its obvious inspirations. There is a reason why a game like Pokemon has had so much staying power in the world of video games. The first few generations of Pokemon were iconic for their personality, designs, and evolution. Despite being over hundreds of them, we can recall the names and regions where they originated from. Not to mention, the formula for Pokemon when it originated was a quite unique and interesting concept, and is to this day still fun in many ways. Palworld is in a different league as a different game, and it offers a different type of experience with a familiar feeling, that being the monster collection part. But the big question that I have here is the staying power of Palworld. Will we remember pals like we do Pokemon? Over time, as I've played more and more of the game, I have kind of answered this question in a few ways, where there are a few that stand out to me, and I've seen on the internet some of them become a fan favorite, like Depresso, and to me, Tombat always is just one that I will remember because I always see that guy just sitting in a spa. That pal is one that'll stick with me. There are so many different ones there though that I think will click with people. There's a different level where it comes to like the iconic characters like Pikachu, Squirtle, and Charizard, and all these different ones that just come to mind off the top of your head from the first generation, not to mention the legendaries. And I have to wonder if long term, Palworld and its pals have that type of staying power, and if this game can sustain a player base in the same way that Pokemon was able to capture people. Now, you may have noticed one thing, and this is the second big question that I have, and that is that in this review I haven't talked about anything regarding a story, and that is because Palworld doesn't really have anything resembling a story. Many survival games, yes, they don't really have much in the story department going on. This and Palworld follows suit in that regard. But I do feel like if they were to go the route of incorporating more reasons to doing some of these activities, whether it is fleshing out many of the different factions or providing a reason to fight many of these different gym leaders and more or less giving structure to those elements of the game and providing more story, I do think that would be something that worked really well in the game's favor. It's not a necessity to enjoy Palworld, but it definitely is something that would brush it up and provide a level of its own unique identity. But like I've mentioned, this game is in early access, so how this area develops is one side of the game that I am fascinated to see. There is so much potential for what Palworld can be, and if it sounds like I'm being overly critical with those types of elements, it is because this game is still in early access and it can build on itself and improve. And the initial pitch and many of the foundations that Palworld has established here, whilst they've drawn influences from many different areas, they've pulled it together and made it work in this way that makes this game feel like an experience that you can't really get with the sum of all its parts anywhere else. There are two paths that Pocketpair can walk here with Palworld, and those are taking this immediate success and popularity and growing the game, fostering a community and building on that, and having a game that grows into something that we will remember for years, or letting this game be a passing trend that we will remember in a vacuum that really was something in early 2024. Only time will tell which route we go down, but I am excited to see where Palworld goes in future. To bring this review to a close, I would like to end this review by saying the road is still long for Palworld to really see its full potential. But man, for a game to be this fun and this addictive in early access really does mean something. Like honestly, Palworld is a game that shows a lot of promise, and I'm really hopeful that it can go the distance. I feel that all the essentials are there, and the foundations and skeleton for this game have been put in place, and truth be told, they are something that is actually really refreshing. And I've put so many hours into this game already. I'm in the midst of making my review and I have no intentions of putting down Palworld and moving on to other things. I still just want to play more. And given the current sentiment around the game and the continuous updates and roadmaps suggest that Pocketpair have no intentions of slowing down with this game, and the momentum for Palworld really is telling. And it is important to mention that Pocketpair in the past, with their game Craftopia in particular, have gone silent with regards to updates and the signals around what's going on with that game. Another early access game, so there is a cautionary tale there to be told, and given how successful Palworld has been and how good of a game it is in its foundations, I don't imagine this history and this nature of what happened and the fate of Craftopia happening here with Palworld, but it is something to keep in the back of your mind. I imagine that the road is long here for Palworld, but I do think that this game really does have the gas, momentum and popularity to really go the distance, and it really has just been telling to see 19 million people log in to play this game across Game Pass and Steam. The only thing now is for Pocketpair to continue to evolve the game and deliver on building on these foundations and running with the recent success. I do believe that Palworld can go the distance, but only time will tell whether or not I am right or wrong on that one, and how they continue to evolve on the winning formula that they seem to have here. Thanks for watching.